Welcome to West of Westeros, a Game of Thrones story, written by Brian M. Brumbaugh, read by Gwyneth Paltrow. Chapter 1, The Edge of Maps. Somewhere beyond the Sunset Sea, Arya Stark stood at the prow of the Nymeria's wake, the wind clawing at her leathers as spray peppered her face. She had no destination, no map, only the promise of what's west of Westeros, the question that had haunted her ever since the long night ended and Winterfell was no longer hers to roam. Behind her, a mismatched crew mumbled to one another in accents from a dozen kingdoms: smugglers, cutthroats, exiles. One even claimed to be a forgotten Martell bastard, though his nose was far too crooked to be princely. Arya didn't care who they were. She wasn't their captain, she was their compass. The first days passed in sunlight and salt. Gulls screamed overhead. The sea rolled lazily beneath the hull. Arya practiced alone on the upper deck, needlework in the literal sense, her blade flashing through the air with surgical grace. Sometimes she imagined she was slicing the air itself, cutting her way forward. Then came the storm. It struck like a whip crack in the dark. One moment calm seas, the next, screaming wind and lightning lashing the sails. The mainmast split like bone. A deckhand, Dornish maybe, was pulled overboard with a splash that echoed louder than thunder. Arya tied herself to the railing with the rope from the rigging and held fast, her eyes on the west even as the sea tried to hurl her back east. When the storm broke, Nymeria's wake was broken with it. They drifted, rudderless, into the fog, the island with no name. They made landfall on the third day, the ship scraping coral as sharp as razors. The beach was black stone and crushed bone, and behind it rose a jungle so dense it looked like a wall. Trees with sapphire-colored bark and leaves like dragon wings. Vines thick as wrists swayed without wind. The locals didn't speak common, or any language Arya had heard, but they painted their skin in ash and ochre, and when she stepped off the ship, they knelt. A white-haired elder approached, eyes milky and blind. He touched Arya's cheek with one finger and whispered something the translator would later interpret as, "The one who walks in dreams has come. The Dream Temple." The village lay deeper inland, perched like a nest in the crook of a wide, whispering river. It smelled of sweet rot, fruit and fungus and fire. They led Arya to a stone temple half buried in vines. Inside, carvings, ones that made her skin crawl. A woman with her face, a wolf with her eyes. A flame-tongued beast circling the sky, its outline unmistakable. Drogon, a dragon with broken chains. They've seen him, Arya told herself. That night she drank the Dreamroot brew, bitter and thick as blood. She saw her father's face, her mother's scream, a hallway of masks, the scent of lemon cakes, and fire, wings the size of a castle roof, black scales like polished obsidian, Drogon tearing through the sky, but not alone. A rider, no face, just shadow. She woke gasping, with claw marks on her shoulder that hadn't been there before. The departure. The crew grumbled when she ordered the ship patched. Half wanted to stay. The island was bountiful, and the locals revered them. But Arya had tasted the world's edge and found it wanting. There was more, always more. She wrapped the clawed tunic in oilcloth and tucked it into her satchel. She stole a page from the temple, a sketch of Drogon soaring above a land split by flame. As they set sail again, the elder whispered one final thing. The dragon watches the broken places. Arya stood at the prow once more, needle at her side, eyes fixed westward. The maps were gone. The edge was behind her. The world at last was opening. Chapter 2, The Crystal Deep, abyss below the waves. The sea changed, no more gulls, no more kelp. Just water as blue as frostbite and as still as graveglass. The Nymeria's wake drifted across it like a ghost, sails barely filled, the air dead calm. Arya sensed it before the crew did. The pressure. Like the ocean was holding its breath. It started with the singing. A soft hum at first, no words, just vibration. Below the waterline. The hull trembled. Then one night, a crewman named Yavik dove overboard, smiling. He didn't come back up, the fall. By the fourth day, they were surrounded by fog again, but this was different. It glowed faintly, like starlight trapped in mist. Arya stood watch and saw movement below the ship, massive, slow, and gleaming like moonstone. The lookout screamed just once before the crow's nest vanished into the dark. The ship cracked in two by morning. Arya was thrown into the sea. She sank, the coral spires. She woke coughing brine, sprawled on a dais of pale stone beneath a dome of living coral. Light shimmered from above, filtered through glassy water. She was breathing, not air, something else. The world here was thick, heavy, but alive. Around her, a city of impossible beauty, towering coral towers, spirals and arches grown, not built. Blue-green light, fish with wings, statues with mirrored faces, and people, not merlings, not quite human either. Skin translucent, eyes dark, hair like woven seaweed. They moved with fluid grace, robes billowing as if underwater, even when walking. Arya reached for needle. It wasn't there. Instead, a figure stepped forward and handed it to her, wrapped in sea silk. A man, tall, mute, and pale, with gills on his neck. He tapped his chest, Corin, then bowed low. The cartographer's riddle. Corin couldn't speak, but he wrote. Maps. Dozens of them. Ink made from crushed shell and squid. They stretched across the floor of his chamber, oceans Arya had never seen. Continents shaped like serpents. Archipelagos like claws. He showed her one map in particular, circular. A maze of islands spiraling inward. At the center, a glyph. A dragon's eye. Corin pointed to the outer ring, where Arya's world began. Westeros, Essos, Sothorios, the continents she knew. Then he drew a line, west, past all maps, to the center, to the eye. Arya felt her heartbeat quicken. Then Corin handed her a shard of shell. Carved into it was the same flame-scarred dragon she had seen in the jungle temple. Drogon, the Leviathan. The city was not empty. A great creature lived beneath it, called Velthrax. Though Corin signed it as the memory keeper, it was not a god. It was worse. A serpentine behemoth with eyes the size of doors and scales that shimmered like oil. It lived in the depths below the city's roots and demanded tribute in memories. Each cycle, the people of the Crystal Deep sacrificed thoughts, memories of birth, love, pain. In return, Velthrax guarded the city from the crushing pressure of the sea. When Arya arrived, the balance broke. The keeper wanted her mind, the trial of mind. Corin led her into the hall of reflection, a chamber with a floor like black glass and walls of living coral. She was to walk the hall and face her past. One step, her father's head on the spike. Another, her mother's corpse at the twins. Her own face, no, her many faces, staring back from the temple of the many-faced god. Then, Jon, at the wall, leaving her behind, each memory burned, and Velthrax fed, but Arya did not break. She reached the end, bloodied, gasping, but whole. Velthrax stirred in the dark and hissed a single word. Fire. And through a portal of crystal, distant and blurred, Arya saw it, Drogon, flying above a frozen wasteland, alone. And for a heartbeat riding him, a man in black. Jon? She blinked, and the vision was gone. Escape. The city trembled. Velthrax stirred. The memory toll had been too steep. Corin gave Arya one last map, etched into pearl, then shoved her into a tunnel of air. A geyser of pressure shot her upward through coral and foam. She exploded from the surface into daylight, gasping, clutching the pearl. Floating beside a driftwood raft, lashed together by her surviving crew. Arya climbed aboard. They said she'd been gone for 3 days. She didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon again. Chapter 3, Ashes and Orchids. Land of black earth and burning sky. The map etched into pearl led them south by west, through storms that smelled of sulfur and water so hot it steamed on the deck. They passed dead islands, charred husks rising from a sea the color of old blood. No birds, no insects, only smoke. And then, on the 12th day, the horizon cracked open. Volcanoes. Dozens of them, spitting flame like the world was bleeding from the inside out. And between them, nestled in valleys of obsidian glass and red gold moss, bloomed fields of enormous orchids, each one as large as a warhorse, glowing faintly from within. The crew refused to land. Arya didn't ask. She took a rowboat, needle at her hip, the pearl map wrapped in oilskin, and rowed alone toward the molten shore. The fire worshippers. The people here wore robes of ash-gray linen and rings of molten bronze. Their skin gleamed with sweat and soot, their hair shaved into spirals of flame. They lived in a city carved from cooled lava, arches and bridges and domes, all black stone veined with glowing red. They called themselves the Emberborn, and they knew dragons, not just stories. They had seen Drogon. "He comes to feed," said one priestess, her voice like flint. "He eats the fire from the mountain hearts, and we offer him orchid sap, which burns hotter than oil." Arya asked why. The priestess only smiled. "Because the flame remembers, and he is the last one who does." The Tower of Emberglass. High above the caldera, perched like a dagger stabbing the sky, stood the Tower of Emberglass. Inside, a spiral staircase. Walls covered in Valyrian glyphs warped by heat, windows made of red crystal, and at the top a chamber filled with paintings, fresh ones, scratched in soot and sap. One showed a black dragon with glowing eyes, wings spread across a sky of knives. Another showed a rider, Jon Snow. Arya reached for it, fingers trembling. "He comes when the world burns," said a voice behind her. The painter was blind and young, barely 10. Her hands were covered in blistered calluses. "I see what he dreams, not what is, not what was." Arya stepped closer. "He dreams of home." "Where is home?" Arya asked. "North of Ash, west of Time, where the snow still falls." Arya exhaled slowly. "Castle Black, the trial of flame." The Emberborn did not trust her. They believed she was marked by the sea god for thieving fire. To pass, she had to walk the rift, a chasm in the heart of the earth where flame met steam. Naked but for a flame-cloth sash, Arya stepped into the fissure. The air seared her lungs. The rock beneath her feet glowed. Visions came in waves. The waif, grinning in a room of masks. Mansirio Forel's last bow. Cersei's face melting in wildfire. Nymeria howling in the dark woods. And Jon Snow kneeling before Daenerys, then driving his dagger into her heart. Arya screamed, but the fire did not consume her. It accepted her. When she emerged, skin blackened with soot, eyes burning silver bright, the Emberborn fell to their knees. They named her Ashwalker and gave her a gift, a vial of orchid sap, pure, white-hot, capable, they said, of igniting sky itself, a sky on fire. She stayed one more night. At dusk, the ground trembled. Priests rang bells. Orchids opened wide, glowing like lanterns. And then the wind shifted, a roar, a silhouette, Drogon. He dove through the ash clouds, wings like torn sails, scales shimmering like molten armor. He circled the caldera once, then vanished into the clouds beyond. Arya didn't see the rider this time, but she felt him. Something in her bones, like the warmth left in a room after someone you love has gone. Departure. She left before dawn, the Emberborn chanting her new name into the smoke. She took the vial, the map, and the memory. Back aboard the Nymeria's wake, the crew said nothing, but one by one they began calling her captain, and she didn't correct them. Chapter 4, The Bleeding Sea, Red Waters, Black Sky. The ocean turned red 3 days after leaving the Emberborn's shores. Not from sunset, from blood. At least that's what the crew whispered. The water stretched like a sheet of fresh wounds, thick, glistening crimson. Arya dipped her hand in once. It didn't stain her skin, didn't smell like blood, but it felt heavier, like it remembered things. Storms came fast here. Winds shrieked without warning, and the stars above twisted as though unsure of themselves. No birds flew this high. No fish broke the surface. Only silence. And sometimes, at night, hollow drums echoed across the water. Then came the wings, the sky rays. They glided just beneath the clouds, massive, elegant, and silent. Like stingrays, but winged and airborne. Flesh thin as parchment, veins glowing faintly violet. They soared on thermals, drifting in hypnotic spirals. One came close enough to blot the sun. Another skimmed the mast, sending men into a panic. Arya watched them, transfixed. Then she noticed one bore a scar, 3 slashes down its left wing, claw marks, dragon-sized, queen of the floating citadel. Near dusk, black shapes emerged from the sea, not islands, ships. Dozens of them, lashed together with ropes thick as tree trunks, floating like a single shifting kingdom. This was Tarmek's Drift, a pirate stronghold never charted, never anchored, a moving city. And at its center stood a throne carved from wreckage, gilded planks, rusted swords, and a kraken's skull. On it sat Queen Sail Rin, barefoot, crowned with shark teeth, sipping firewater from a carved tusk. "You've wandered into my sea, girl," she said. "The toll is blood or gold. And your ship doesn't look golden." Arya didn't blink. "Then take my blood." Sail grinned. "You've got Stark in you. I like that." Arya tossed her a small vial, the orchid sap. Sail uncorked it and stared. "What in the drowned hell is this?" "Dragon bait," Arya said. "The raid." Sail offered Arya a deal, help her raid the floating war citadel of a rival pirate lord, and she'd offer her the Drift's fastest skiff, a crew of her choosing, and maps older than Valyria. Arya agreed. She donned sea leather armor, knives strapped to thighs, and joined Sail's strike team on gliders, canvas-winged rafts pulled by tamed sky rays. The war citadel was a brutal fortress. Cranes, catapults, fire barrels, but Sail's crew dropped in silent and fast. Arya moved like smoke between guards, cutting throats, disabling pulleys. They reached the war vault. Inside, crates of Valyrian steel shards, dragon glass, and a cracked horn, carved with strange symbols. When Arya touched it, it sang, low, trembling. A dragon song. The flame returns. The raid turned chaotic as alarms blared. Sail and Arya fled with the horn and a sack of gold, pursued across the deck. Then the sky split open. Drogon dove from the clouds, black wings veined with lightning, mouth blazing orange. He didn't attack, he circled, watched, listened. The horn in Arya's bag vibrated like a heartbeat. She looked up. Drogon's eye, massive, golden, ancient, locked with hers. She stepped forward, but Sail pulled her back. "Not yet, wolf girl. That's not your storm." Drogon vanished into the cloud bank, the sound of his wings flattening the sea, parting the drift. Back aboard the drift, Sail kept her word. Arya chose a skiff called the Hollow Fang, black and lean, with obsidian sails. A quiet navigator named Prent, 2 twin spearwomen from Karth, and a mute cook with burn scars joined her. Before she left, Sail pressed the dragon horn into her hand. "You might need it, or it might kill you. Either way, it'll be fun." Arya raised a brow. "Why help me?" Sail winked. "Because I've seen ghosts, and one of them looked like you to the next storm." The bleeding sea faded behind them as the sky turned silver and strange. Arya stood at the helm of the Hollow Fang, eyes forward. She was no longer chasing Drogon. She was chasing what followed him, and somewhere in the wind, she thought she heard her brother's voice. Chapter 5, Mirror Moon, the Desert of Twin Shadows. It began with silence, not peace, silence. No wind, no waves, just stillness so absolute the crew stopped speaking without knowing why. The sea ended in a wall of sand, not dunes, cliffs, gleaming silver, rippling like metal. Arya guided the Hollow Fang aground, disembarking barefoot onto sand that shimmered like powdered glass. The sky was wrong, purple at the edges, stars pulsed faintly, and above them hung not one moon, but 2, one real, one mirrored. The navigator Prent whispered, "We've crossed into a land outside of time." Arya touched her dagger. It hummed faintly. The glass-worn pilgrims. They found the first body within an hour, preserved, sitting cross-legged, eyes open, clothing centuries old, bleached pale, skin like wax. In one hand, a book written in runes neither Valyrian nor Westerosi. In the other, a shard of silver glass, cracked. The pilgrim had carved something into the stone beside him. "The moon lies. Trust only your shadow." That night, Arya dreamed of Braavos, but the streets were made of mirrors, and every face she passed was her own, older, younger, different scars, different lives. She woke with a nosebleed. The monoliths. They came in rows, towering obsidian stones etched with spirals, circles, and glyphs that rearranged themselves when not watched. In the distance, across a salt flat so smooth it reflected the sky like water, a city shimmered, not built, projected. Its towers flickered like candles. Its gates opened and closed without sound. And standing between Arya and the city was herself, not a reflection, a twin, the split. This Arya was taller, wore no blades. Her eyes were darker, colder. You stayed, she said. Arya raised a brow. No. I left. You became no one. I chose to be someone. They circled each other like wolves. This mirror Arya spoke of the faceless men, of staying in Braavos, becoming truly nameless, of missions never failed, of a world bled dry of identity. She believed Arya had made a mistake. Arya didn't argue. She drew needle. Only one of us walks out. The battle wasn't fair, because they knew each other, every feint, every dodge. But Arya fought with something her double had forgotten. Memory. She parried a killing blow and whispered, Syrio Forel sends his regards, then drove the point of needle home. The double gasped, smiled, and dissolved into silver sand. The city of shards. The projection solidified. Arya entered. Buildings had no doors. She stepped through them like walking through fog. Rooms looped back into themselves. She found an armory with no weapons, a library of empty pages, a garden where the trees whispered her name in the voice of her mother, and in the center of the city, a fountain. Instead of water, it spilled memory, glimpses of other lives, other selves swirling in silver mist. Jon, burning Daenerys, Nymeria, standing on a battlefield made of ice, Drogon, flying toward a tower buried in snow. Atop him, a man cloaked in black. Jon Snow. The moon shatters. Arya climbed the tallest tower. At its peak, a mirror aimed at the sky. It didn't reflect the world below. It reflected possibility. She saw it all. If she'd stayed at Winterfell. If she'd died at the Red Keep. If she'd ruled the Riverlands. If she'd never left the Hound. So many roads. All led to one thing. Drogon. A harbinger. Not of war, but of return. She smashed the mirror. The false moon cracked. The desert screamed. The city dissolved. Escape from the Mirrorlands. The desert collapsed behind them as they fled. Glass shards rained like hail. The sky rippled. Arya and her crew, bloodied, bruised, half-mad, made it back to the Hollow Fang. The silver sands had turned black. Only one moon remained overhead. Arya stared at it for a long time, then whispered, I'm coming, Jon. Chapter 6. The Hollow Mountain. The Black Shore. The mountain rose out of the sea like a god's tooth, jagged, immense, and half-shrouded in steam. No birds circled it. No trees clung to its cliffs. Just black rock and a single carved tunnel mouth yawning at its base, rimmed with ancient runes. Arya stood at the bow of the Hollow Fang, eyes narrowed. It's not natural, said Prent. There's no light inside. Arya smiled faintly. Then we bring our own. She took needle, a torch, the dragon horn in its leather wrap, and went in alone. Beneath the skin of the world, the tunnel sloped downward for miles. The deeper she went, the warmer the air became, thick, damp, laced with sulfur and the faint copper tang of blood. Strange fungi lit the walls, casting sickly green glows. At one point, the passage opened into a massive cavern. She wasn't alone. They emerged from the shadows, men and women in cloaks of stone dust and bone. Faces painted like skulls. Some carried torches made of glowing quartz. Others carried nothing at all. They didn't attack. They bowed. A voice echoed, The Ashwalker returns. The city of the Skull God. It was a city built inside the skeleton of something long dead. The cavern was large enough to house 1,000 towers, but instead it housed one, the Sanctum of Skulls, rising from the sternum of a fossilized titan. Its ribs arched like bridges. Its spine served as a road. Lanterns flickered in eye sockets larger than ships. Here, the people were split. Some worshipped Vlar, the death god of silence. They believed Arya was a harbinger of endings. Others followed Talix, the god of rebirth. They claimed she was a phoenix, born of dragonfire, returned to awaken the world. Both sides agreed on one thing. The mountain stirred when Drogon flew above it. The schism. Arya learned the truth from a scholar named Aaron Howell, whose body was stitched with glowing thread and whose voice was soft as snowfall. The Hollow Mountain is a wound, he said. The gods died here. The world sealed the cut with stone. But fire opens all scars. Aaron showed her a mural, drawn in blood and bone, depicting a dragon spiraling down from the sky. Below it, men tore their faces off, becoming new beings. Some became monsters, others became prophets. Arya pointed to the center of the mural. That's Drogon. Aaron nodded. and that is his rider. The figure had no face, but wore a cloak of snow, the descent to the heart. The sanctum had a forbidden chamber, sealed by fire runes and dragonbone locks. Aaron helped her open it. Inside, the heart forge, a chamber of magma veins and floating stones kept aloft by unknown magic. In its center, a stone altar. Upon it, a feather, jet black, still warm, and beneath the altar, breathing, a creature, slumbering. Arya did not see its face, but she felt it, ancient, angry, watching. Then she heard the voice. "You are not ready." It was not Drogon, but it was Kin, the uprising. While Arya descended, the schism above turned to war. The followers of Lars sought to seal the mountain forever, destroy the heart, trap the fire. Talix's acolytes wanted to awaken the buried beast, believing it a key to eternal life. Arya emerged in the middle of the battle, dust and flame, chants and screams. She chose neither side. She rang the dragon horn. The sound split the cavern in half. Stalactites fell. Bones cracked. The earth screamed. And then Drogon came, the return of flame. He didn't fit in the cavern, but he came anyway. His wings shattered stone. His fire incinerated whole towers. But he did not strike Arya. He landed before her, lowered his head, and she stepped forward, touched his jaw. He smelled of ash and thyme. And as she looked into his eyes, she saw Jon. Not riding, not controlling, becoming, the bond between man and dragon, beyond saddle, beyond will. They were merging, ashes of the mountain. When Drogon left, the mountain collapsed behind him. Arya barely escaped, riding a minecart of bone and metal along a rail once used by the Skull Priests. She shot from the tunnel mouth into moonlight, rolling to a stop on the beach. Behind her, the hollow mountain caved in with a final groan, and from its smoke rose a shape in the sky. Jon, riding Drogon, but as a shadow, not yet real. Arya breathed hard, ash in her lungs, blood on her face. "I'm getting closer," she whispered, and turned her eyes north. Chapter 7, The Worm's Court. The Serpent Isles. North of the hollow mountain, the waters twisted into mazes, channels winding through rocky outcrops shaped like fangs and coiled beasts. The sky remained pale blue, but the sun, bent, warped, as though refracted through some unseen lens. Ships vanished here, maps lied, compass needles spun. But Arya Stark had learned not to follow maps. She followed instinct. And the feather. The black feather she'd taken from the Heart Forge remained warm, always pointing slightly east of north, so she let it guide her into the Serpent's Maw. The sea boiled on the 7th day, and the island appeared, the palace that slithered. It wasn't stone, not really. The worm's palace was grown, like coral fed on blood, shaped by obsession. Its spires curled like fangs. Its walls shimmered green and black. Ivy glistened with golden sap. Statues moved when not watched. And at its center, on a throne that pulsed like a heart, sat the last of old Valyria, Zareth Korra, the shifting one, neither man nor woman, neither old nor young. Zareth changed with each blink, hair coiled, then straight, skin gold, then silver, then ink black. Their voice echoed, layered with dozens more. They called Arya by name, Wolf of the North, Killer of Kings, Stealer of Faces. "I didn't come to be flattered," Arya said, hand resting on needle. "No," Zareth smiled. "You came for the dragon." They stood and began to walk, barefoot, unhurried, trailing a cloak of living snakes. "He comes here sometimes, Drogon. Though he's no longer just that, is he? Where is he?" Zareth paused. "Wherever Jon Snow dreams, the serpent game." Zareth offered hospitality. But nothing in the Worm's Court was free. Arya was drawn into a contest, the Serpent Game, a deadly ritual of secrets and blades where each challenger carried a lie written in blood upon their skin. To win, one had to uncover the truth of the others, before being undone by their own. There were 12 players. By midnight, only 2 remained, Arya and Zareth. Truth revealed. Arya's blood-written lie, "I do not want to find him." Zareth's lie, "I cannot die." They circled each other, barefoot in a ring of ash and salt. Zareth struck with illusions, faces from Arya's past, Robb, Sansa, the Hound, even Ned, all pleading, all accusing. Arya struck with silence, with calm. She whispered, "You're not immortal. You're just afraid." And she cut. Zareth bled gold and smiled. He is becoming more than man, more than beast. He is balance, and he is waiting. North, always north. Then Zareth dissolved into 1,000 scaled butterflies. Arya stood alone in the ring, the truth still burning on her skin. The lab of scales. In the palace depths, she found it. A laboratory of sorts. Books bound in skin, flasks filled with dragon marrow, scales sorted by age, size, emotion. Zareth had been studying Drogon, trying to clone him, failing, but not for lack of science, for lack of soul. In a vault behind the lab, Arya found a stone egg, twice the size of a man's skull. Black, veined with red, warm. She left it there. She wasn't here to raise dragons. She was here to find the one who already flew. Departure from the court. As she left the island, the palace behind her crumbled, not into dust, but into serpents. Thousands of them, sliding into the sea. Zareth was gone, but their words lingered. North, always north. Back aboard the Hollow Fang, the crew awaited her, eyes wide. Arya gave no orders. She only pointed toward the sky, where a black silhouette soared just beneath the clouds, trailing flame, Drogon, and a rider, cloaked in snow. Chapter 8, The Sunken Star. Frozen sea, hollow sky. The world grew colder. Ice veined the sea's surface in branching lines, then plates, then a single frozen sheet that cracked beneath the weight of memory. The Hollow Fang could go no farther. Arya disembarked alone, dragging a small sled filled with rations, furs, her dragon horn, and the feather that still pulsed like a heartbeat. The cold bit through her bones. The silence gnawed at the edges of her thoughts. Then she saw it, a shape beneath the ice. A tower, no, a city, buried beneath the surface, lit by a glow that came from nowhere. The breach. She found the entrance 3 days later, a fissure in the ice rimmed with runes that shimmered blue in the moonlight. She slid through, blades ready, and fell, down into air that wasn't air, into warmth, into music. She landed on stone, not cracked but singing. The city was real, perfectly preserved beneath the frozen ocean. Domes and towers of mirrored crystal and flowing quartz. Carvings lined the walls. Dragons in flight, people dancing, instruments she'd never seen. Glyphs shaped like songs. This was no tomb. This had been a sanctuary. The music bound dead. They were still here, not alive, not quite dead. Tall figures with translucent skin, robes of woven mist, faces painted with tears. They moved in slow rhythm, bowed to her without speaking. Their voices came not from mouths, but from the walls, the floors, the air itself, a harmony of thought. They called themselves the Resonant, and they had once sung dragons into peace, the song of firebound air. A resonant elder, blind but luminous, took Arya to a central hall, a grand amphitheater with a silver spire piercing the ice ceiling above. There sat a single instrument, large as a wagon, strings that shimmered, keys made of bone. Arya ran her fingers across them, and the air shifted. The hall listened. She heard footsteps in snow, the creak of a saddle, a breath. Then, Jon's voice. "Hold on, I'm almost there," she spun. But no one stood behind her. The elder bowed. "You are bonded. You are heard." He nears the memory pool. Beneath the amphitheater was a chamber flooded ankle-deep in liquid starlight. Every step brought visions. Arya saw Drogon, smaller, curled beside a child with dark eyes. She saw Jon on a cliff, blood staining his palms, his hair longer, his face lined with years. She saw Bran, alone on a throne of roots and bone, eyes white with sight. And then she saw a fire. Not destruction, rebirth. Jon and Drogon as one. Wings of black, eyes of storm. A new force. Not king, not conqueror. Balance. Collapse of the dome. The Resonant warned her. The bond was forming too fast. The city, long dormant, could not hold it. The ice above cracked. A spear of frost pierced the amphitheater, shattering the spire. Waves of frozen mist howled down every corridor. Arya fled through caverns of glass, clutching a shard of the dragon song instrument. She surfaced from the ice just as the dome below caved inward, with a roar that echoed across the sea. Behind her, the light vanished, but not the song. The song now lived in her. The sky burns again. As she staggered back to the sled, the clouds above parted, and through them, Drogon tore across the heavens, wings aglow, fire trailing like a comet. He roared once, loud enough to shatter the quiet inside her chest. Arya dropped to her knees. Tears froze to her cheeks. She was getting closer, so close she could hear Jon breathing when she slept. Chapter 9. The Ghoul King's Masquerade. The bridge to nowhere. The road curved like a rib cage. Suspended above a chasm of fog and stars, the bridge stretched for miles, anchored to no land, just shadow. Arya crossed it on foot, each step echoing longer than the last. No wind, no sound, only whispers and languages she didn't know, spoken by mouths she couldn't see. At its far end loomed a palace stitched together from bones, mirrors, and old iron. A sigil above the gate, a mask split in two, one side laughing, the other screaming. She was expected. The masquerade of dust and bone. Inside the palace, a grand ballroom. Candles floated, chandeliers spun with no chains. The guests moved like dancers in a fever dream, faces hidden behind masks of gold, porcelain, skin. Elves, orcs, men, beasts blurred into one another like melted wax. No one spoke. They danced, twisting, gliding, shifting partners with every beat. A skeletal minstrel plucked strings that hissed instead of sang. Arya wore no mask. Not at first. Until one was offered to her, plain white, with a single crack down the left cheek. To enter the court of the Ghoul King, whispered the servant with stitched eyelids, you must forget who you are. Arya put it on. The world changed. A house of illusions. She wandered. Rooms shifted behind her. She walked through a dining hall where guests feasted on memories, plates filled with smoke that made them weep. Through a hallway of mirrors, each showing her as someone else, Arya the queen, Arya the child, Arya the monster. She entered a chamber where the stars fell like rain, and another where a clock counted backward, each tick aging her slightly. She began to lose track of time, of purpose, of name, until she saw him, the Ghoul King. Seated on a throne of black bone, his mask was threefold, grinning, crying, snarling. His cloak was made of silk spun from regrets. His crown bled. He didn't move, not at first. Then he whispered, "Come closer, little Stark." Arya stepped forward. He removed her mask. "You're not lost." "No," she said, "just looking." For him, the king smiled. The rider of fire, the man of snow, the half-dragon. "Where is he?" The Ghoul King leaned in. "You've seen him a dozen times. Not real, not whole." "No," the king whispered, "not yet." He raised a finger and pointed toward the ceiling, which dissolved into sky. And there he was, Drogon circling above the palace, and on his back, Jon Snow. But not as she remembered. Taller, broader, eyes like embers caught in frost. His hair floated like mist, his mouth moved. He was speaking to her, but no sound came. The test of sanity. The Ghoul King offered Arya a deal. Stay. Join his masquerade forever. Wear a new face every day. Forget the pain of family, duty, longing, or remember, and fall. She smiled. "I already wear faces. I just don't lose myself in them." She threw the cracked mask into the king's lap, then drove needle through his heart. If he had one. The collapse of lies. The palace screamed. Walls melted. Floors bled. The guests burst into birds, moths, flames. Arya ran through rooms that flickered between past and future. Winterfell in flames, King's Landing overgrown, a lonely wolf standing on a mountain of ash. She emerged into the fog once more, heart pounding, soul intact. Behind her, the masquerade dissolved into dust. The rider descends. She didn't sleep that night. She stood at the edge of the broken bridge, the sky clear above her, and then he descended, Drogon, black as judgment, fire curling in his throat, and on his back, Jon Snow, no longer shadow, no longer dream, real. His eyes met hers, and he nodded. Chapter 10, The North Beyond North. Returned to the edge. The Hollow Fang had no crew left. Prent had vanished in the Mirrorlands. The twins fell at the Bleeding Sea. The mute cook stayed beneath the ice. Arya sailed alone now. Each oar stroke was silent. The sea frozen stiff, sky blank and wide. The feather from the Heart Forge no longer glowed. The dragon horn had cracked down the middle. Even Needle had dulled at the edge, not from neglect, from use. She passed the shattered wall, or what was left of it. Great ice blocks lay crumbled across the wastes, shattered like fallen thrones. Beyond it, the land was dead. But she was not, and neither was he. The last watch. Castle Black stood as a ruin above the frost line, wind-carved and half-buried in snowdrifts. A single light burned in the highest tower, a dull orange glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. Arya climbed the broken stairs, fingers brushing walls she barely remembered. She passed where Sam once studied, where Maester Aemon once sighed, where Jon once bled. And in the courtyard he stood, waiting, Jon Snow. He wore no crown, no armor, no title. His hair was longer now, streaked with white. His eyes burned, not with rage, but with quiet purpose. At his side stood Drogon, coiled like a shadow, wings tucked tight, steam rising from his nostrils. Arya didn't speak. She ran to him. He caught her, held her, and for the first time in years she cried. The explanation. They sat before the fire, silence between them like a comfort. Jon finally broke it. He brought me here. After, Dany. I saw her, Arya whispered, in pieces, in fire, in dreams. So did I, he said. But Drogon saw more. He spoke of the time between, the flight across the world, the lands where no maps dared to draw, of how Drogon's soul reached into his, not bonded like horse and rider, something older. We're not man and beast, not anymore. I don't even know what we are. You're my brother, Arya said. Always, he replied. The balance. Jon spoke of what was coming. There's more fire stirring, in the east, in the south, in the blood. Another war? Another cycle. Drogon shifted in the snow. His breath lit the flakes like embers. We won't rule. We won't fight their wars. Then what? Jon looked out into the endless white. We'll watch and wait. And when the fire gets too hot, we'll burn it clean. The choice. Jon offered her a saddle, not of leather, but bone and chain and magic. Drogon lowered his wing. Arya stepped forward, paused. What happens if I climb on? Jon smiled. You won't be Arya Stark anymore. Then who? Whoever you choose to become. She looked west again, at the setting sun beyond frozen trees. She'd chased it all her life. Now, she could go farther still, or stay. Flight. She mounted. Drogon accepted her weight like he'd been waiting for it. Jon mounted behind her. No ceremony, no army, no banners. Just two broken wolves flying beyond the end of the world. The wind screamed past her ears. Arya laughed. And for the first time in years, she felt free. Final sightings. They were seen only once again. By a child in the last village north of Skagos. A black shape against the moon. A beast with two riders. One cloaked in fire, the other in shadow. And somewhere west of Westeros, the sky split open, and the stars changed their names. Thank you for listening and watching. Please like, share, and comment. And as always, please subscribe if you would like more stories.